Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1987 horror comedy, The Witches of Eastwick. Now, this is one of those films that I honestly grew up with. Um, it was one of my mother's favorite films. She used to watch it quite a bit on VHS and then on DVD, and I would always watch it whenever I had the chance. So it's like one of those movies that, in a lot of ways, was this little introduction to the horror genre for me when I was young. So I definitely have a soft spot for this film. Now, that being said, I do understand its flaws. For one, I feel that this movie is way too long. There was no need whatsoever for this story to have a running time of nearly 2 hours. Just wasn't necessary. As a comedy, it's not really laugh out loud funny. It has some really witty lines of dialogue, but other than those moments and maybe a few exceptions, it's not really the best comedy. When it comes to a horror story, it's not really that scary, other than the sequences with Veronica Cartwright's character completely just losing her mind and then spewing cherry pits everywhere. But other than that, even the sequences with Jack Nicholson, his character Daryl Van Horn, in full on horn devil mode, really weren't that scary. Especially the finale, when you see giant devil Jack Nicholson. I don't know what they were doing with that design. It looks weird, but not in a way where it's actually scary. It just looks strange and off. Um, but that being said, the film really does have a lot of things about it that are genuinely great and fantastic. For one, it has a phenomenal cast. Jack Nicholson, Cher, Susan Sarandon, Michelle Pfeiffer, Veronica Cartwright. Uh, Features some really impressive direction by George Miller, who, of course, you might recognize as a guy who worked on the Mad Max films. This is actually his first United States production that he did. He worked with a big studio, and he was very nervous about it. And his nervousness was actually justified, because the studio system was very different than what he dealt with in Australia. And he was a guy. He's actually a guy who's willing to make a lot of accommodations for his cast and his crew. And he did the same with this film on the set. And as a result, it was as if he showed a sign of weakness to the producers. So they just stepped all over him. Anytime he would ask for some extra help or some extra things from the studio, they would give him less than what he asked for, because they saw him as a pushover. It took him and Jack Nicholson combined to literally just walk off the set one day for the studio to get the hint that he's not a pushover. And that's just crazy, that just doing something like that, being kind and accommodating to your cast and crew, is something that's just viewed as a sign of weakness. George had his own flaws too. Like, initially, he did not want anything to do with Cher. In fact, the rumor is he actually called up Cher and like chewed her out on the phone when he saw that she was cast in this film, and she actually fired back, and eventually, they found a way to work together and worked some magic, despite the fact that I don't think either of them really liked one another. And even Jack Nicholson wasn't actually the first choice to play Daryl Van Horn in this film. Apparently, Bill Murray got the role, but then he, for some reason, dropped out. And that would have been interesting to see Bill Murray play this kind of character. I'm glad that Jack Nicholson eventually got the role, because it's a role that he was born to play, just like he would go on to play the Joker a couple years later, which is another role that, he was really just brought to this earth to perform on screen. And the character of Daryl Van Horn was just perfect for Jack Nicholson's own devilish charm. and it's one of his best performances. I really love the impish, just devilish, just straight up smarmy character that he plays in this film. The way he delivers the lines of dialogue, they're very rich and very uh, condescending in a lot of ways, but at the same time very manipulative, is quite impressive and really quite amazing. And George Miller did a. I honestly think, despite all the things that he had to deal with on the set of this movie, apparently it was a very troubled production, a very problematic production for him. He managed to turn in a really fine effort when it comes to the direction of the film. Nice use of angles, nice use of shot selection. Um, a lot of these sequences definitely had a feeling of depth and size and scope to them. The moments that needed to be grand and epic in scale really did feel that way. He really worked very well in the visual range when it comes to really making certain visuals pop, especially the stuff that Industrial Light and Magic did for the film when it comes to the effects, like the tennis sequence and the finale. Despite the fact that I'm not too big on the design of the giant devil Jack, it's still well shot and well done regardless. Um, Sequences like when Daryl Van Horn is first brought into Eastwick, because the three women they start thinking about him, and they use their combined powers, so to speak, to bring him into this world, and the skies get all cloudy and everything. That was well shot as well, and including the opening sequence that played out during the opening credits. Um, a lot of the visuals though are heavily influenced and enhanced by Vilmos Zsigmond's cinematography. He's a very accomplished and very well known cinematographer, and his work here is no exception to the rule for the most part when it comes to his work. He's a very impressive technician, and that is all on display in this film. Now, it's based on a book by John Updike I've never read, but I felt the screenplay by Michael Christopher. I thought that was a really solid job in terms of the various different witty lines of dialogue. Daryl's rant on women at the end in the church is a riot. All the other moments when Daryl is self-deprecating men just to get into women's pants is also really a lot of fun. So are the moments where the women get back at Daryl. Speaking of getting back at Daryl, I really like the whole sequence near the end before the climax. The whole setup for the climax, really, where the women get their revenge with the voodoo doll of Daryl and stick pins in him, and I just, and there's some great physical acting by Jack Nicholson in that particular sequence as well. And there's a lot of other moments in the script that really do click and really are quite magical in a devilish and really delectable way. But I feel that this film at the same time could have benefited from a little less words. The screenplay is very clever in a lot of ways in terms of its dialogue, but then there's moments where there's just too many words and too many bits of dialogue and sequences where I feel that it would have been more effective if you had less dialogue, if you had less, in this instance, less would have been more. Also, I feel that when it comes to the overall setup of things, um, there isn't really. I guess Daryl Van Horn isn't your typical antagonist. He's in a lot of ways portrayed as someone who comes into the life of these women and actually, in a lot of ways, helps them break out of various different shells. In particular, Susan Sarandon's character of Jane, she's this very stuck up, very tight knit person, and when she meets Daryl Van Horn, she blossoms into this very sexually active and confident woman, and I feel that that's actually a positive. So there's a lot of conflicts going on in the film, and also there's a lot of moments where you're conflicted as an audience member in terms of who to root for. In a lot of ways, you don't really want Daryl to lose, even though he's the devil, which is an interesting dynamic, but it kind of makes the film. It just kind of it really just doesn't help the film move along. There's a lot of moments where it just kind of just stumbles around in a daze because you don't really have a concrete conflict among everything. They try to throw something in about halfway through or a little bit over that when Daryl is mad at the girls because now they don't want to be around him and they don't want to be with him, and so he enacts revenge on them with all these various different fears that they have, and that's well done. I would have to say the bed of snakes, the stuff with pain with Michelle Pfeiffer's character, the sequence where Susan Sarandon's character just gets super old and decrepit in a blink of an eye. So there's and even just the ferocity displayed by Jack Nicholson when he's just eating this tomato or something, or persimmon or whatever the hell it is, and just mashing it in his mouth, and it's representing Michelle Pfeiffer's character who is afraid of pain. So and there's also tonal issues with this script. Like you have stuff with the Veronica Cartwright character, which is really intense and arguably the scariest moments in the film. Like I mentioned earlier, the scariest stuff in this film deals with Veronica Cartwright and her devoutly religious character of Felicia Alden, and seeing her completely fall apart psychologically, and also the physical stuff, just the vomiting of the cherry pits and everything. It's just very, very visceral and intense. But then it all ends in a very lackluster way. They don't go all the way with it. So it's insinuated that her husband finally had enough and killed her, but instead of taking a more visceral approach to match the visceralness, to match the intensity, and to really cap it off in a very intense fashion, the screenplay decides instead to just take a more stylistic approach. And I don't really feel that was really the best approach to make. You really should have shown her getting bludgeoned to death by her husband to really hammer home that things are going horribly awry in Eastwick, even more so than before. That this is no longer just foolish, harmless, fun and games with a devil. This is now like really hard and violent and scary stuff. And then, like I said, the tone, like the ending when the girls throw the voodoo doll into the fire, giant Devil Jack turns into like what is it, like a mandrake root or something with a face on it. Looks like a cherub, and then it giggles, and then it disappears in a spark, and then there's cartoon sound effects. Like that does not work. It doesn't work with the tone of the film. And even a sequence like the tennis scene, it's fun, it's whimsical, but like it also doesn't kind of fit with what they're trying to do either. But I'm fine with it being in there because it's a really cool effect and it's a really well done bit of work by Industrial Light and Magic. In that scene though, I do wonder, like, why does Daryl have a scratch on his face? Like, is it because he had really hot steamy sex with Susan Sarandon or something, her character, and then like she scratched him? It's not really explained. He just shows up and he has a scar on his face, and that makes me wonder if there were like deleted scenes. There probably were. There probably was a fair number of deleted scenes in this movie. I would not be surprised at all. Other elements of this film that are worth mentioning are the score by John Williams. Uh, Effectively whimsical, and not necessarily one of his best scores, but it's good. It works. It works with the film. It works with what George Miller and company are trying to do. It's well edited by Hubert C. de la Bouillier and Richard Francis Bruce, And I can't sing enough praises about the cast. Jack Nicholson as Daryl Van Horn. He's just this really slimy person, or devil, really is a devil in this. But he has a certain charm to him that you can't help but be drawn to. And a lot of charisma, a lot of personality. Really a lot of fun to watch Jack make his magic work with this particular role. Cher's good too as Alexandra. In a lot of ways, the pillar of the group, the pillar of the film. Susan Sarandon, loved seeing her really branch out and really stretch her acting skills by playing this tight knit, really almost conservative person, and then turning into this really sexually active and free character in Jane, and just absolutely gorgeous to boot. Michelle Pfeiffer, Asuki, she didn't really have as much to do. She was there, but she seemed like out of the two characters, she was just kind of one that just was tagging along for the ride. Veronica Cartwright, honestly, in a lot of ways, stole the film as Felicia Alden. One of her best performances. Really tough role to pull off, and she pulled it off in spades. Richard Jenkins was fine too as her husband. Carol Stroken, who you might recognize from the Addams Family movies, what Barry Sonnenfeld did, who played Lurch. He's in this, as well as Fidel, the in a lot of ways manservant for Daryl Van Horn. There's just a lot of things about this film that are noteworthy. The production design, I love the look of the house that Daryl Van Horn is in. The art direction, there's a lot of scenes that really stand out visually. But like I said, it's not a film that to me personally is flawless, or a film that is great, or a film that I would watch over and over again, or you know, anything like that, because of the fact that it's a little bit too long. It suffers some pacing issues because of that lack of a real concrete conflict until like the end, where it just feels like they just kind of made it up. They just kind of pulled it out of a hat, and it was like, all right, here's the conflict now. He's mad at the girls, and now they got to stop him. One more thing I want to mention about this movie, about the insane backstory or behind the scenes, is apparently this is a rumor, but I honestly buy it. I 100% buy it, because I think this is actually something that George Miller mentioned in an interview. So I'm siding with George here, and it really ties into the just history of ridiculousness and excess of the producer John Peters. So according to George Miller, producer John Peters decided he wanted aliens to appear in the movie. No joke. John Peters, the guy who wanted a giant mechanical robot spider in Superman Lives, and probably is the one who shoehorned it into Wild Wild West, he's the guy who also wanted aliens in the Witches of Eastwick. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't fit with the film in any way whatsoever. But he's like fucking Giorgio Stokolos for fucking Ancient Aliens. It's like, aliens! We need aliens! So it's just like fucking aliens, because he thought that it would be great because Aliens in 1986 was such a big hit. So he actually went through and went to the trouble of getting a stuntman dressed in an alien costume and bringing him to the set of The Witches of Eastwick and trying to convince George Miller to put the alien in the movie. It's like, put it in the movie, anywhere, I don't care. You know, aliens are big, they're hot, they're huge. And understandably so, George Miller was not happy. Neither was Jack Nicholson. And both of them walked off the set until John Peters like finally got a fucking clue and realized, well, I guess aliens are not going to be in this movie, and you know, this is kind of a dumb idea, or they're not going to do it. It was just like, oh my God, John Peters, you're a fucking clown. Um, I would have loved to have been a fly in the wall, though, in that particular moment, just to see the look of incredulousness on the faces of Jack Nicholson and George Miller as soon as John Peters comes in with a guy dressed in an alien costume and tries to pitch it to them. I mean, oh my God, that's just comedy gold. Somebody should make a John Peters like fake autobiography that is just all about these crazy, ridiculous rumors and these real life moments in his career where he just thought that he would get away with trying to push such absolute bullshit into the movies that he was producing. Um, yeah, I definitely, I could not believe what I was reading when I saw that. I was like, oh my God, that is hilarious. In a lot of ways, that's actually funnier than anything in the movie. But I still like the film. I would recommend it if you like Jack Nicholson, if you like anyone in the cast. It's a fun movie. It's a little bit too long. Like I said, it does have some issues, but it does have a lot of merits. And I can see why it has a cult following. I can see why there are fans of it. I personally would love to see this get a remastered Blu-ray. Excuse me. Apparently, maybe they're fucking with me, man. I better slow my roll before I start vomiting cherry pits all over the screen. Um, but really, it's one of those films that I definitely get, and I would love to get it on Blu-ray in a remastered HD print with new features and everything. I think it's something that would really benefit from a Screen Factory special edition someday down the line, because the Blu-ray in the US, it's out of print because it was only as a double feature with Practical Magic. There's one overseas that's region free, but the transfer is really not that good. It's fine, it's adequate, but it could be a lot better. Um, but yeah, I really got nothing else to say about the Witches of Eastwick except thanks for watching my review, and as always, I'll see you later. See ya.